Hi, this is Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast. Next up, speaker and best-selling author of Predictable Revenue, Aaron Ross. In today's session, Aaron will cover what has changed in sales over the last few weeks and months, as well as strategies that you can implement now in order to adapt. He will also cover what is the beginning of the end for what he calls copycat success and how to make a lasting impression on your team members during this time of crisis. Before we get to the content, I'm going to quickly pass it over to Alex Lamascus from Ring DNA for a quick survey. Ring DNA and the Sales Enablement Podcast are developing the Selling Forward Research Study, an incredible research document with valuable insights from thousands of attendees at today's event. Everyone who participates will receive a copy of this compelling research, so please answer these questions to the best of your ability. Now, let's get into it.
All right, hey everybody, glad to be here, and thanks Alex for helping set this up. I'm going to share this playbook to reignite growth. Hopefully we'll have some time for questions, but everything's running quickly these days. Why not? If you haven't heard of me, I worked at Salesforce.com in the early days to help create an outbound sales team process that helped double how fast they were growing in those days. And another fun fact is big family. Oh, there you go, I hit it twice by mistake. So we've got 9 kids. We actually just moved to Edinburgh, the UK. So I'm calling you from there, from Los Angeles. About the Salesforce experience and family experience, wrote these 2 books. Thinking about a third, we'll see, but I'll share some highlights from these. And of course, there's a lot of stuff going on these days with the pandemic. So this playbook to reignite growth really just kind of focus on these 4 topics, right? Mindset, specialization, and niche, and predictable lead generation. And I'll go through those, starting with the mindset. And so this year really is the year of unpredictability. I really feel like things are starting to loosen up. We're starting to see that. Sales are turning around for a lot of people. A lot of people are still dead in the water, but we haven't even really seen the full recession. So I'd say is continue to invest in yourself and your business, and you could, whether it's for many of us painful or maybe not as painful, but come out of this in a better place than before. Right? There already is this new world that we've got. And if you're in sales, if you're not seeing consistent traction yet, if it's still erratic, you're still struggling, you can't forecast, like you can't predict. And this could go on for some number of years, and we just don't know. It could get better, could get worse, could get better, could get horrible, could not. Like, you can't plan that way. So assume there's gonna be some surprises. I really think it's gonna get worse before it gets better. Like, governments are still doing a lot of things to prop us up. So kind of be prepared to put on a new mindset, how you're approaching work and sales and making it predictable or not. So if you're one of these teams that's still missing a lot of your prior quotas, I mean, there's a lot of companies that have or should throw away their old quotas, whether that's the prospecting team or sales team. You may need to start from scratch. Maybe you've got more of a minor change and you can adjust them. But it's a mistake to hold on to prior goals, whether it's for the year or activity goals or quarterly quotas, if they're just not based on the reality of where your business and market is today. Again, we have this whole spectrum of companies who've hit the wall, and some other companies are having a boom. So again, depending on where you fit, you kind of decide how much has changed for us. Like, should we keep things with minor differences, or should we start from scratch in some way? And this can, of course, apply to processes at anything you've got. I'm just pointing those quotas as one example. And if you have had a team that's done a lot of face-to-face selling in the past, you just have to be ready for that to have basically gone away. When it will come back, but it'll be a lot smaller than it was for quite a while. And it depends on the business, depends on the company. You know, like every salesperson needs to be able to virtually sell in some way, and to be prepared for if you, especially in Europe, which is much more dependent on face-to-face, but to be prepared for face-to-face, basically prepare for the worst, which doesn't come back at all. And so if it does, then it's nice. But again, even if you're ready, your prospects may not be at all. So ultimately, this is really a mindset exercise. Like, the last few months really have never been more excited about where the world is going, and even my business. Like, we're having to adjust like everyone else. But I would say if you're really struggling with this personally, professionally, and there's a lot of places people can struggle at work, at home. Some people love remote work. Some people hate it there's so many reasons. But no matter what's going on with you, like everyone has problems. And I would encourage you to practice this. This is really kind of like an exercise to train your mind to be more entrepreneurial. Because entrepreneurs take problems, they turn them into solutions. So in column 1, you can take a list of all the worst things about the crisis, or about remote work, or about virtual selling, or about whatever it is that's really bothering you, your home workspace, like the things that are really the worst parts of this, and make a list of all the worst parts of what's happening, and get that out of your system. Then go back and make a list of all the reasons that there's an opportunity here to make things better. Because we really have had this reset button on everyone and how we want to work. Do we want to be in an office or not? Do we want to work in the morning and evenings, or what's the mix? It's like this blank page that you can start with. And so if you feel like you've been entrapped in a circle of doom or some version of that, then I really encourage you to start, whether it's for your personal life, side projects, work, sales job, whatever that is, to start to see all the opportunity here. There's really never been more opportunity, because there's never been more problems, and problems do equal opportunity. It's so strange with the mindset. So one more thing about predictablerevenue.com. We're actually doing these 5 steps. I won't go into all of them. We can focus more on like 4 and 5 today. But of course, like everyone, spending less cash. Went through and kind of examining all our customers, which ones are going to do well, struggling, or just are kind of like dead in the water because of the market of business. Refocusing on team, like communication, motivation. I know there's a lot of people who are struggling with remote work and like a lack of human contact and just variety. Talk about that later. And lead generation and sales. So one Uber trend I want to mention is this fact of information overwhelm. Like it's just everyone, there's so much information. And honestly, a lot of it's very anxiety creating. I mean, first we had a pandemic, and then we had riots, and who knows what's next. And what you find is people, like their mental energy for things gets to be very small. So you have to keep in mind across sales and marketing, everything you're doing, to this overwhelm, and that you want to focus on making things simple for people. Like, because overwhelm means they have less energy to figure things out. So you got to make it easier for them to do that. So mindset was this first section. We're going to talk about specializing sales. Now this is, again, a chance to adapt what you've got. And specializing sales is really the first step. It makes everything easier. In the States and lots of places, people have adopted sales specialization. But if this is new, and again, there's still a mistake people make. I just want to remind people that salespeople shouldn't prospect much, ideally. And they don't like to do it, the experienced ones. They're not very good at it, honestly. And even if they can't sustain it. So the answer to this problem and many others in sales is specialization. I don't know any team in the world who the coach tells all their players to attack and defend. No, they all have their part to play: attackers, midfield, defenders, goalie. And similarly here, in sales, you want to make sure that you have everyone in their roles, and the roles are defined appropriately. So you've got the lead response for marketing leads. There's junior SDRs, inbound SDRs. You've got dedicated outbound prospectors, where the bulk of prospecting happens. Account executives might be doing some prospecting to 10 or 20 or 30 key accounts or partners, really not more than that. So those AEs are signing new customers, and you've got customer success and account management. Now, your roles may be different, but focus is the key. Focus is a counteracts overwhelm, and you want your people to be doing fewer things better. That's really, it makes a tremendous difference to people being able to overachieve in what they're doing versus trying to juggle too many activities. Right? And you're almost turning your sales team into a Lego block system here to make it easier to grow. And when you do specialize, and typically you got to go further than you've got. I mean, no matter how many roles you've got, you need more. That's my lesson here for you, no matter if you think you've got it right or not. When you do it, you get better insights to the teams, more scalable, and you create this talent garden to grow people up through the ranks. So this really is the key to reducing struggle as you adapt or grow, no matter what you're doing with your sales team. The right number of roles with the right definitions. Just a couple of ratios if you haven't seen these. About 1 inbound lead responder for every 400 inbound leads that need to be reviewed by a human a month. And 1 prospector should be supporting, say, 1 to 4 salespeople, and not more than that. Now, if you're too small, you're 1 person, you start by specializing your time. Focused blocks of time on your calendar. And again, when you specialize, you actually get better service because you've got people, no matter what step that customer is, people who are specialists in that step to make sure the customer gets what they need. Nailing a niche is one of the steps every company needs to go through, because all your ideal customers and their pains may be different than a few months ago. So ultimately, this really means knowing your customers well enough that you can, paid growth will work for you, that your message is and your targeting are sharp enough that you can do outbound prospecting successfully or online spending marketing successfully. There's a lot of companies that spend money in prospecting or marketing and they waste it because they haven't nailed their niche and their messaging. But again, this world of overwhelm means that whether you're a big company with a huge product offering like Oracle here, or a small company with tons of possible customers, that world of opportunity, there's too much opportunity, there's too much choice. It's almost saying, hey, customer, we can do these 20 things, and they're just overwhelmed, versus saying, all right, for this right kind of customer, like, what's our real message, right? And make it really clear to them. You know, like tuning your radio signal and retuning it these days based on whatever's happening in your market. Because again, your ideal customers may have changed, may or may not have, and their problems may or may not have changed in the last 3 months. And when you don't do this, when you focus on all the things you can do versus the most important things and the features, you just end up confusing people, and you can confuse your own people. You know, if you're a salesperson at Oracle trying to sell like that product list, it's just impossible. So how can you make things simpler and more focused for your customers as well as for your own people? Because when they're confused, people say no. Now, they might not say the word no, they might say later, or I don't know, or send me more information. But confusion is your main competitor and enemy, not actual competitor companies. Because your goal is to go from kind of working with companies when they're willing to give you a lot of attention, and how can you sharpen your message to be more targeted, to fit in a much narrower window of attention that customers will give you these days. That means more specific targeting, clearer messaging, right? How can you be a big fish in a small pond? A niche means making the pond smaller rather than the fish bigger. Like, you want to be focused. It's not about thinking small, it's about really focusing. So again, whether this, you should know, have things changed for you the last few months or not? What kinds of customers need you the most? They're the most willing to buy and get the best value versus the ones where you're nice to have, right? That's the easiest place to start rather than trying to sell everything to everyone. You know, I went through this about 10 years ago after Salesforce.com, and it's been a few years developing something called Unique Genius, helping people make money through enjoyment, created CEO Flow, turn your employees into mini CEOs. But when I got married and had kids, and I had to make more money, you know, my niche for results really was outbound prospecting. That is where companies would sort of pay me the most money and get the best results, and that was my strength. So that led me to focusing on that niche and publishing the Predictable Revenue book, and then the Impossible to Inevitable book. Right. So for you, again, focus on which customers need you the most, not trying to have a message for everyone. Going back to, like, oftentimes your roots of your strengths. Now, one other thing around, you know, in kind of the market and niche is unique. I call it unique genius, right? There's tons of great products and there's tons of great marketing. So one thing that can stand out is your brand and your people, like your voice. Think about this, the difference between a newsletter that comes from a company versus a newsletter that comes from a person. So, I mean, I think CEOs and entrepreneurs are the most underutilized marketing asset that companies have, because most are uncomfortable by putting themselves personally out there as a spokesperson, and a very active spokesperson for the company. Internally, you can have there's a lot of people struggling with lack of connection, and you know, there's a lot of changes going on. There's a lot of anxiety in the world. And so anything you can do to help your people kind of find their own voice and support each other. And I would encourage you, for example, we do these Unique Genius calls and predictablerevenue.com, and people just talk about the projects they want to create, make some progress on, and they all kind of encourage each other to help define what the project should be, and to take some action on it, and to tell them they're valuable, right? that everyone has valuable ideas and can start to like put themselves out there, and whether it's internally or externally, help act as a representative to the company. And the most important example is typically the C-levels or CEOs, because they have a much more external focus and internal. But like the more that you can just find your own self and your own voice and translate that into more connection within your team and the market, that is going to help everything within your market and engagement within your employees. So this last section is predictable pipeline, right? Talk about obvious one, outbound prospecting. I know, again, I'm going to say it again if you haven't seen this. Lead generation is your lever for growth. It's not hiring more salespeople. It's even making the product better, yeah, but that's still a way to get sort of more lead generation, higher adoption. So how can you systematize lead generation, right? Now, I don't know still how many people realize, I think it's changing, that outbound prospecting is still, as much as ever, a very powerful, predictable way to generate results. All these companies do some form of outbound prospecting. Facebook, right? Google have outbound prospecting teams. I don't know, SurveyMonkey did. Now, even if you're a consumer company or small to very, very small businesses, outbound prospecting can be a system you can use to go actually acquire not customers, because you can't really make money with really small customers. You know, kind of less than $10,000 lifetime value gets dodgy. But you can use outbound prospecting, the same system and approach, to go get partners, distribution partners, or marketing opportunities. Whatever you want to use it for, customers, partners, marketing opportunities. It's not about all the artificial intelligence or fancy technologies or email or messaging scripts or LinkedIn phone calls. It's really about the dashboard. It's really about the metrics to know what's working or what's not. Now, it's not true just for outbound. This is true for any lead generation program, but let's focus on outbound. Just like this is our family car from the States. If the gas gauge is not accurate, if the speedometer is not accurate, if our maps is not accurate, we're gonna have a lot of trouble driving the car. And likewise, if your outbound funnel isn't accurate, and most aren't, you're gonna have a lot of trouble figuring out what's working and what's not. Most outbound funnels are inflated. There's reasons, because there's more subjectivity in outbound than almost any other point of sales. So yeah, you do want to capture your activities. How much of what are they doing? You do want to capture the results of, are they getting responses in meetings? But the primary metric that people miss is, what's the number of qualified, audited opportunities generated per month per SDR? So whether you call these sales accepted leads, sales qualified opportunities, there's a lot of labels. Something has been generated and passed to a salesperson, and this has also been third-party verified. It could be a manager, someone in sales ops, someone who's unbiased, who really is looking for the truth. Was this qualified appropriately? Is it outbound? Is it entered in the CRM? Because that is the main area where outbound teams have a lot of wishy-washy, inconsistent data and opportunities. And if what's going into your pipeline is inconsistent, you personally can't trust it, and your results are not going to be predictable. You want to save yourself from thinking you've got 10 million in pipeline, but then if you do an audit and go back, you're like, wow, actually maybe we only have 3 million. That's not a happy surprise. So you gotta make sure that your funnel is accurate as a first step. And everyone's outbound funnels are a bit different. This is Zora. Zora has kind of goes higher end. And like a lot of companies, they have some goals around list building. And this is, by the way, straight out of the From Impossible to Inevitable book. So kind of a summary of what Zora does. They do a lot of interesting things. And by the way, they're almost $200 million revenue company, ARR, and about 60% of their new business comes from outbound still. So activity goals, they're trying to get these 16 "Are we a fit" calls a month, and translating that to 8 demos, which I left out for space, and then translate that to 4 sales accepted opportunities. About half of those get like custom technical demos, and then 1 customer. Right. So again, whether it's outbound or some other funnel, if you can create some predictability, that's going to give you the most leverage to create predictable growth. And again, who knows? A lot of things are kind of settling down now, but any day there could be, again, a massive surprise. Like, again, the surprises are not over. Obviously, if I knew what they were going to be, I wouldn't call them surprises, but they are going to come. And if you are, whatever you're doing, and also this actually is not just outbound. This is really anything you do with your customers. It could be blogs, videos. Keep them short and simple to understand. Right? Just people, when they don't have a lot of time or energy, or they're stressed, they have limited brain energy. So the simpler you can make it, the easier it is for them to get it and act on it. You'll get better results. So this has changed a bit, but same thing that earlier, a couple months ago, Jeremy, I love this example around when something works, it gets copied a lot faster, right? This copycat success. And it's just going to happen. Like, the world's more connected, it's going to get more connected. Copycat success will happen more quickly, more often. So Jeremy Donovan posted this around how he started getting tons of email templates. It all sounded the same when the corona was really hitting the lockdown. And when everyone is zigging, and you zig, you don't stand out. You can write a great email, but it all blends in. So, and going back to this idea of the best antidote to copycat success is really you as a company, you as your people. Again, I call it unique genius, but really finding your voice, finding the confidence to try things on your own, whatever that channel is, and to make sure, and for it to get to not work out the first bunch of times. Kind of by definition, if you do something new, it's usually not gonna work at the beginning. But to find your voice as an SDR, as a CEO, as a company, to practice finding your flair, what message you believe in, what you care about, the style, whether you want to do it over in written form or video or audio, whether you want to bring in interest or not. There's so much to people and so much value and interesting things to people. And unfortunately, at work, we tend to squeeze a lot of that personality out of our communications because it's just business, and that leaves them often just flat. I'm sure some of you, like me, might be in a lot of company Zoom calls, and they just, at some point, they just kind of start to feel flat, like people just talking about the same kind of tactical stuff every day, and you don't really feel like you know them. So that's what you don't want with your marketing or your sales emails or internal. You want your personality to continue to shine through. That's really the best antidote to copycat success. So lastly, just talk about a few outbound team challenges. If you do have a dedicated team of outbound prospectors and you're seeing just not doing what you want, the few most common problems and solutions are these. So firstly, you've got to make sure you completely separate out the inbound lead responders from outbound prospectors. That is like number one, if you've got both types of roles. Prospectors will not be very successful unless they're very focused on prospecting. Again, prospectors should be matched to a small number of salespeople they work closely with. Don't pay just for meetings, pay for sales accepted leads or sales qualified opportunities, right, in revenue, like towards the bottom of the funnel. Managers shouldn't have more than 10 reports and maybe no more than 6 or 8, depending on how much change is happening. This last one is make sure you got territories for people. They don't have to be geographic, but they need something to divide the market up. You can't just have everyone out there just going for whatever they want to do. It just gets to be a mess. So once you get some predictability in your pipeline, again, whether that's inbound, outbound, allbound, omnibound, whatever you want to call it, then you can multiply your results. So these are some examples that we've seen, whether it's a 10x in meetings, going from kind of nothing to something within a year, or Acquia, which was a hyper growth company, within 6 months had kind of fleshed out their outbound system and then multiplied it. It went from, it started with 2 or 3 SDRs, got it working, and they hired another 40, add tens of millions of revenue and hundreds of millions in valuation. So just to wrap up here, we got embrace all this change and frustration and anxiety as the biggest opportunity of your life, either for yourself, to recreate yourself, or your business. It really is. It's that blank sheet of paper, so many ways. And specialized sales, if you have a sales team, can you add more roles or redefine them so people could do fewer things better? And nailing a niche, go back to the market. Who needs you the most? One thing I didn't mention, anyone, like, make sure you're talking to customers. If you're a CEO, CMO, CSO, whatever you are, either if you're attending sales calls, but make sure you're talking to customers. That's the best way to keep your ear to the ground. Don't rely on reports from people. And then in creating predictable pipeline, sometimes you don't have a single person in charge. So make sure, and it's not their top priority. So you gotta have one person, or maybe it's a marketing person who's really focused on content marketing, and the outbound team just suffers. But someone, if you want that program, outbound or inbound, to really, really work, you need someone who's in charge, and it's their top priority. That is when the magic happens. So for more, the best book to start with is From Impossible to Inevitable. You can find it from impossible.com. And of course, our business of helping companies build outbound sales teams or assess and fix them. You can find out more at predictablerevenue.com.
Yeah, we have time for one question. Sorry for all of you that we probably won't be able to get to your questions, but we'll see about getting you answers via email. One question I thought would be good, just coming off that last point, is would you advise sales teams to change their territories during this time? And if so, how?
Maybe. So again, this is part of this reevaluation on if you're geographically based. There's a lot of regions that have been hit really hard. Obviously, New York, LA. If your territory, so if you're industry based, a lot of industry. So yes, you should at least look at them. And changing, like having territories is a pain in the butt, and changing them is a pain, and it's really a pain. But the only thing that's worse is not having them or keeping a system that may not be relevant anymore. So yeah, you gotta at least possibly look at everything in the sales world you've got and maybe redo it. Like all bets are off right now still.
I think we've got time for one more. Our lead generation and outbound prospecting still going to work in the coming quarters or even in the coming years as digital channels get noisier?
Yes, so for sure they are going to continue to work. What actually works will continue to evolve like everything else. In fact, we've seen a lot of outbound prospecting pick up again, and some people getting better results than ever right now. So I think the techniques will keep evolving. And I'm gonna say it again, the thing that will help ensure that you stay on top of the changes in the world as a person and as a team is, again, I call it unique genius. It's like, what are you interested in? What kind of change do you want to make in the world or in your business? What do you care about? What are your interests? How can you bring more of you to what you do? Because the world's going to be more virtual, and there's a lot lost when we're not meeting in person. So in other words, you have to kind of make that up with being more of yourself. That could be often just like personal stories and details you may not be used to sharing with others, whether it's on social media, in sales calls, and email. That's one simple place to start. That's a way that you can create more ways for people to feel connected to you, no matter what happens in the market, no matter how busy things get. Because one thing that will cut through the noise always is people who feel like they're talking to other people, whether it's a recording or not. So one last thing is that you're going to be okay here. There's a lot of businesses going under and jobs, and it's going to be I expect it to get pretty ugly once the government support ends. But you're going to be okay as long as you have people you can care about and care about you, a roof and some food. All the financial stuff, you might just have to let it go for a while, and don't let, for example, your sense of worth and security get attached to a bank account number or your credit score.
That's some good
So,
advice.
well, thank you all, and thank you, Alex, too, for helping organize this and put it together.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aaron, for a ton of really actionable pieces of advice here and tips. Really appreciate your time, and I'm sure everyone else does as well.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.